Bismillah. Welcome to Civil Society, a podcast about Islam, culture, and politics. Civil Society is a Noble Savagery production, and I'm your host, Noble Savage. In today's episode, no guest, just me, but come, let's put the pieces together. I've been asked about our recent fall knowledge retreat, The Emperor Has No Clothes, Breaking Today's Idols, and I just want to explain the name of the retreat because I think that's what most people have expressed curiosity about. So, The Emperor's New Clothes is one of the children's stories by the famous 19th century Danish author of children's stories and adult stories, Hans Christian Andersen. And the story goes like this. Once upon a time, there was an emperor who ruled a vast land. His empire was vast and it was abundant, but the emperor himself, he was quite vain. He suffered from a deep, dark vanity, which was rooted in a deep, dark arrogance, istikbar. As part of his vanity, he owned many, many fine clothes, including one coat for every hour of the day. So absorbed was he in his vanity and clothes that just as people would say of other kings, he is holding council, they would say about him, he's in his dressing room. Needless to say, he neglected the affairs of his people and the affairs of his state. One day, 2 swindlers came to town, claiming to be weavers. They promised the emperor that they would provide him with the finest clothes that anybody had ever seen in all the lands. Of course, the emperor was immediately intrigued. They said, there's one thing you need to know about these fine clothes. So fine are they, so incredibly unique and beautiful, and like no other, that only the people who are the most intelligent and the most fit for their office can see them. Everybody else, including stupid people and people who aren't fit for their office, can't see them. The emperor thought, this is perfect. Not only am I going to be wearing the best clothes in all the lands, but I'm going to be able to tell the smart people from the stupid people based on who can see my new clothes. The people were also excited. They were looking forward to seeing the beautiful clothing and to finding out how stupid their neighbors are. The 2 swindlers took the money that the emperor gave them and bought the finest silks and brocades and buttons, which they shoved into their suitcases, and they worked deep into the night clacking away on empty looms. You see, they weren't sewing anything at all. The emperor, curious and anxious about what he had gotten into with the 2 weavers, sent his top minister to check on what they were doing. This was his most seasoned veteran within his cabinet. Now, the top minister went to see, and he didn't see anything on the looms because there was nothing there. But he didn't want others to think that he was foolish. So the swindlers saw him looking, and they said, come, look closer. Aren't these the finest patterns? Aren't these the most beautiful colors? Again, the minister didn't want to seem stupid, so he said, yes, yes, most charming. The swindlers demanded more money, and with it, they bought more fine silks and even gold thread. Next, the minister went back to the emperor, and the emperor said, well? And the minister could only say, why, these are the loveliest and finest clothes I've ever seen. After that, the emperor sent another very honest official to go and check on the work of the swindlers because he was getting so excited about his new clothes. The same thing happened with his honest associate. He went, he looked, he didn't see anything, but his ego was tricked again by the swindlers, and he came back and reported that they were the finest clothes he'd ever seen. Finally, the emperor decided to go himself. Now, he had arranged for a big parade the next morning in order to show off his beautiful new clothes. Could it be, he thought, when he came upon the empty looms clacking away, am I unfit for my office? No, it couldn't be. He gave in to his ego, he gave in to istikbar, and he praised the beauty of the swindler's non-existent garments. The next day was the big procession in the city. Everybody was talking about it, the kids, the women, the men, the emperor, and all of his court. Everyone was buzzing with excitement. That night, the swindlers worked all the way till morning, burning many candles. They worked on empty looms as before, snipping their scissors in the air and pulling needles that didn't have any thread in them. The big moment came, and the swindlers helped the emperor change into his magnificent new clothes, the non-existent ones. What a noble costume, all his ministers agreed. The lords behind him fumbled to carry his non-existent train. They held a canopy over his head, and out they walked. He was naked as the day he was born. He walked down the streets, and all the people excitedly looked from the windows and from the sidewalks, and they said, wow, look, the emperor's new clothes, aren't they so fine? Finally, a small child called out, but he hasn't got on anything at all. And just like that, his words broke the spell that had fallen over all of them. Now, the reason we've named our project that we want to undertake through a series of knowledge retreats, 4 of them, is because we are in a moment in which so much of what's all around us, the things that are given as normal and accepted, are false, completely false. Language itself can't be trusted, right? It's very Orwellian, 1984. It's very up is down and down is up, good is bad and bad is good. An entire edifice of confusion, a palace of lies. So when we want to speak about civilian casualties, this is called collateral damage. When we want to talk about children suing parents for, over the right to have sex altering surgery, why, this is sexual freedom, this is gender affirming care. When we hear about the 73-year-old Sikh grandmother, Bibi Harjit Kaur, she was arrested in San Francisco and then taken in shackles to Georgia. And, she was held in really terrible conditions. She was in a cell with not a chair and a bed. She was sleeping on the cold, hard floor. She was denied vegetarian meals as per her religious requirement. She was not given anything to take her medication with, which, by the way, they didn't even give her medication for the first couple of days she was there. But, when they did give her the medication, finally, they gave it to her with a tray full of ice and an apple, both of which she couldn't have because of her dental issues. And, she was overall treated very poorly. And we know better as Muslims how to treat our elders. But what is this called in the language? This is called law enforcement, right? This is called immigration and customs enforcement. When we hear about the passing of 11-month-old Isil Salem Al-Arja in Khan Yunis in Gaza not too many days ago, 11-month-old baby, another one of the babies that has starved to death, what is this called in the language? Israel is calling it an outright lie that children are actually starving in Gaza. What we notice right now is that the edifice is cracking. The building of lies is cracking, my brothers and sisters. The palace is cracking. The job of the historian, such as my husband, the job of the social scientist, such as myself, the literary critic, the cultural critic, the investigative journalist, is to understand the palace, to identify its structural weak points, and to call out bravely and truthfully, like the child in our story, that the emperor has no clothes on. Alhamdulillah, the first retreat was a huge success. Really, it exceeded expectations. And shout out to everyone who supported and attended and helped to organize and host us. May Allah reward them all. But our classes were just very, very well received, and there was a lot of engagement. The Q&A was the most interesting part, as always. Our first class was about the polytheism of modernity, meaning that we have specific forms of shirk today that did not exactly exist in the same form at the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But just like there were idols during his time, there are idols during our time. And if we want to clear the Kaaba the way that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and his righteous companions, upon them be peace, the way that they helped to clear the Kaaba, well, then we want to make sure that we first understand what exactly we're talking about. What are these idols? Where did they come from? What is their history? What do they mean? How are they structured in society? And how do each of us participate in some of the false notions that come along with those idols? So our first class was about the shirk of modernity, and that class showed modern day shirk within the context of previous historical forms of shirk. The next class was about how the Enlightenment, a very important moment in Western civilizational history, around the 1750s, with the Industrial Revolution, with colonization and Western imperialism, you had a movement of ideas that took the scientific revolution into the world of philosophy, or perhaps the scientific revolution happened because the Enlightenment philosophy was changing. But we had new conceptions of time and history. We had new conceptions of the human being, so-called liberated from God and from religion. We had new conceptions of nature, and nature as something that is not sacred. As Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Attas has told us, secularization, one of the 3 movements of secularization, is to desacralize nature. But we know, because the book of nature provides at least 1/3 of the proofs in the Quran, proofs of Allah's oneness and His grace and His majesty, come straight out of nature, right? So the natural world for us is nothing if not sacralized. Our next class was about sovereignty and imperialism, followed by a class on old forms of colonization and new forms of colonization, where I spoke about epistemicide, or the killing of knowledge, from the universities in Gaza today, to the way that exclusions are made in education to keep certain experiences and voices out. After that, we watched the most riveting movie, The Battle of Algiers, and had a great discussion about how the Algerians used general strike and organizing for years upon years and enduring throughout the journey, so much suffering and cruelty, but finally, alhamdulillah, we're victorious against the French. Then we had the closing session about the Islamic secular and the middle path, which is based on the work by Dr. Sherman Jackson. Our closing reflection was the most intimate part of the retreat because we all had an opportunity to reflect together on our experiences during the retreat and share knowledge with one another and really just put a bow on it. So yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody at the next one. While I have your attention for just 2 minutes, I'm just going to say that doing research in the social sciences, I'll just make a comment. I've been doing this for a few years, and it's a lot like making a puzzle, because you start out with a big picture, which you don't really form in your mind until you've already examined and studied the map and the mind map around the topic that you're looking at. You move on to examine every small piece of evidence and turn it right side up, if you will, take account of it and lay it all out. Then you begin by making the outline or the frame of the puzzle or of your research question, which is very broad contour, but for me it's very helpful. I approach both of these things in the same way, but of course there's other ways to approach it. And as you fill in the outline, you begin to notice that in the pieces that remain in the interior of your research or of your puzzle, you're able to group them according to what part of the big picture they represent. Now, when you're dealing with actual pieces within a region of your puzzle or your paper, what you do notice is that you sometimes have to turn a piece of literature or argument or concept or evidence around in your hand, and maybe even turn your whole body around and walk around, get a fresh perspective, walk away from your research and come back and look at it from another side. Look at it upside down, look at it from the side. Look at your arguments in different orders and see if they still connect and make sense. When you're done, sometimes there might even still be a piece missing, but that's because research is never really done. You make a contribution, but you realize that if it's any good, it's going to ask a further set of questions that inshallah can help to further clarify. Anyway, thanks for watching. This was the 5th episode of Civil Society Podcast. I've got one in the chamber that I'm very excited about, so stay tuned. We have our next episode with Ustada Ruqayya Yaqub of Light Legacy Books. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
يا إله الكون يا سندي الله الله أنت يا رباه معتمدي فبدنياي وآخرتي الله الله يا رحيم كن بالعون معي يا إله الكون أنت يا رباه معتمدي فبدنياي وآخرتي الله الله يا رحيم كن بالعون معي يا نعيم الروح يا أملي الله الله يا وليد الشوق في مقالي يا عليم الكون